Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops in Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
All right, we got Derek Brown already live in the chat, so finally get to catch a live show. Let's go. He's pumped. We're pumped. I know, the Pistons had their season cut short there by the Knicks last week, and we haven't gotten to record since then. But lots of excitement still, it seems like, going into the offseason from the fans, and rightfully so. So yesterday we had Tracy Langdon's press conference, and now we get to talk a little bit of Pistons basketball before we actually get fully into the offseason stuff. Vinci313 AO, what's up, guys? If you are in the live chat, if you're tuning in with us here right now, please do the like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that usual stuff. I don't know what can you like and subscribe on Facebook? Is that a thing?
Definitely like. I don't know if you can subscribe, but
well, do whatever you can over on Facebook. And then if you're listening on podcast as well, leave a comment or review, something along those lines. That does help us out. It all helps us grow. But before we actually get to the many questions we got today, Blake, how about just your thoughts on that playoff basketball series we got to witness for the Pistons?
I mean, definitely disappointing. Like, I hate that that's my first thought, though, just because it was such an incredible season, and this team really exceeded where everyone thought they were going to be. It's just, I mean, the stat that the last 4 games, and Derek, shout out to you. We do have to find out how to get Super Chat working. We really appreciate you. But yeah, it was the closest series in terms of points separated and since the 1980s or something like that. So, and this Knicks team, this is the first time we've recorded since the series ended, but they're already up 2-0 on the Boston Celtics in a couple pretty wild games that could have went either way as well, but they stole both those games. That's a good basketball team that you don't really know when this run is going to stop, and who knows what's going on with Boston. But overall, just for the Pistons to be right there, and it definitely felt like they belonged, which I think is the most important and long-standing thing to me. Definitely disappointing. It really hurt to not see them get a playoff win at home. But I have a feeling that that's not going to be their last time for a long time like it was before.
No, that's not going to be their last shot at all. Like you said, they looked like they belonged. And I think for me, I was just really happy when they got that Game 5 win because, a gentleman's sweep, it's still a gentleman's sweep. If they went out 4-1, it would have felt like maybe that one win was a fluke. Maybe they just got lucky, right? They just caught the Knicks on an off night, something along those lines. Even with how this point differential in that series turned out, you still maybe would have had that sinking feeling in the back of your head going into the offseason. But they got that second win on the road, right, in Game 5 after they got kind of hosed a little bit by the officials in Game 4, right, on their own home court. The way do they come back, respond, get that second win? And then at that point, it was all kind of gravy to me because it's not a fluke. It's not a fluke at all. Like you said, they proved that they belonged. They looked legitimate against a very good Knicks team. And I keep going back to where we were before the season started, thinking about our predictions for win totals. And I think you and I were both thinking, man, 28, is that okay? Is that too high? It felt like we were maybe too high on the team by picking 28 wins, and they go out, they get 44. They give the Knicks a good series and prove that they are a heck of a lot more than we ever could have thought. So I get the disappointment. At the same time, after they got that second win and it went to Game 6, I was just happy. I was good with whatever after that.
And they almost they were so close to forcing 7. They probably should have, and
they were.
Yeah, and you've seen the only time they won in the series was on the road. So anything can happen if you get to a Game 7, and they were right there. I feel like easily they could have they didn't win the series, so I don't like saying it, but like the series could have been totally different if things are flipped in those, and like the game 4 that you mentioned and everything like that. I just think at the end of the day, like Jalen Brunson made some tough shots. And I know all the talk about his foul baiting and everything, which is super annoying when it's going on. But that dude's a great basketball player, made some unreal shots, and he's been great in their second round series as well. And Cade has been incredible. I know there were a number of shots that didn't fall for him in big moments that you would have liked to see those drop, but he had a good series too. I know he was a little cold at times, but you just can't ask much more when you're going up against a really tough basketball team.
Yeah, absolutely not. And the final thing that I would want to leave fans with here before we get into the questions, and yeah, guys, we will do a big like playoff takeaways episode. Just not this one. We actually had quite a bit of pre-submitted questions, so we want to make sure that we get to those and all of your live questions too. If you're in the YouTube or Facebook audience with us now, so make sure to send those in too. But I just don't let yourself as a fan. This is my soapbox PSA. All right, don't let yourself as a fan play the game of, well, if a couple balls bounce a different way or a couple calls go a different way, the Pistons actually may have won the series. Because I get it, right? That's true. The games were all so close. They had a shot to win every single one of those 6 games. I get it. That's great. The Knicks could say the exact same thing. They could turn around and they could go, man, if we just get a ball game stoppage, in game 5, maybe we can pull that out and win this in 5. If we in game 2, if they just played a little bit better down the stretch, made a few more shots, and the Pistons missed a few more shots, that was still a tight game, right? So the Knicks could have been looking at maybe a sweep at that point. Like this goes both ways. And the most exciting thing I think out of that series is it should have been 6 games. This was supposed to be a 6 or 7 game series, and it was. The Pistons lived up to it. They were a tough out. They didn't go down easily. And like you said, they looked like they belonged. That's a huge win. So don't do the revisionist stuff. Be happy with what we got, because it was incredible. It was incredible. Now, speaking of the incredible thing that we got, let's do a little bit of a season look back here for a second. This was a fun one. And for you, Blake, I have the categories in our outline.
Yeah.
Peek behind the curtain for everyone else. I couldn't fit all of them into the banner here on StreamYard, so I'll read them off. But DP Victory, DPB comment says, please distribute the Pistons' 44 regular season wins into the following categories. This is great. So, number 1, number of wins being attributed to the Pistons' young players. Number of wins attributed to the veterans would be number 2. Number of wins attributed to coaching or culture changes would be 3. And then 4 would be how many or how we would like to see those numbers change going into next season if they win 50 games. So let's just focus on the 3 categories first, and then if we have time, we can get onto that last one. How would you distribute these 44 regular season wins between those 3 categories?
It's tough because I'm not gonna cheat and just like make it even between all of them. But I think you can make an argument that like each of these impacted the each win like pretty like if you remove one of these elements or categories, the season could have went a totally different way. So I'm just gonna use like 40 to just make it a nice round number for us. But I think I would do it like 20, so 50% young core, and then the other 25% split it up between coaching changes and the vets. The only reason I'm giving so much more to the young players is just simply because of how incredible Cade Cunningham was. Like, I don't think this season is anywhere near what it was if Cade is simply like just not doing what he does. He doesn't make that all-star leap, have all these incredible moments that he had throughout the season, because he's really just the focal point of this team. He's the franchise player. He's the future. So I think he deserves a lot of credit, and not saying like JB and Malik Beasley and Tobias and Schroeder at the trade deadline don't, because I think it really was an aspect of everyone working together. But I think I think what Cade did is just like the Pistons wouldn't be anywhere close to there if Cade didn't have the season that he had.
I think Langdon said it in his postseason press conference, right? Cade had been really good his first couple of years in the league, but what he did this year, the leap that he took, was essentially driving winning basketball for the team. He's the best player. He's the straw that stirs the drink, and it all works. He figured out how to win in the NBA with him being the main driving force behind that. And I completely agree with you. Like, I'd even say too, I think with these three categories, right? You got the young players, veteran additions, and then coaching or culture changes. They all kind of bleed in to one another a little bit because like Cade and Tobias Harris and Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr., huge impact on the culture that developed during the season. Like it was the veterans, yes, and I mean honestly, we'll get into offseason talk later, but I'd be a little worried about moving on from Tobias Harris because of this in particular. It seems
Mm-hmm.
like he's such a veteran leader for this group, but all four of those guys shaped the locker room as well as JB Bickerstaff and the coaching staff that he brought in. So that's the young players and the veterans impacting the coaching and impacting the culture. And I mean, I think too, like you look at a guy like Assar Thompson and just being surrounded by more shooters than he ever had been in the past. That's fantastic, right? That certainly helped him when he didn't necessarily have an off season last year where he could have worked on his game. So to acclimate as quickly as he did and to still be put in situations with not the best spacing, but still to be flanked then by a lethal shooter like Malik Beasley, for example, that helps. That did a lot for him, for Ivy too, early on in the year. So, like, I think I'm with you. It'd probably be, yeah, I do your exact same percentage. Just split it in half. So you go 50 to the young players, most of that being Cade, and then our other two categories with coaching and the veteran additions, that being splitting the other half. That feels right. Let's also look at some playoff question here. This is just a general one, but so this is Turia. Hopefully, I said that right. In the DVB comments says, "Is it fair to say we are at a saturation point of sorts with parity in the NBA, where pretty much anything can happen in these playoffs?" So they expanded a little bit on the comment actually in the comments, the DVB comments for the article that we had posted, and couldn't fit that all here, but essentially kind of comparing it to the NFL, where there's a little bit more randomness with the matchups. And perhaps we're even seeing that with, Denver stealing a game against OKC and the Knicks being up 2-0 right now. So what do you think about parity right now in the league?
I think, I mean, I think it is in a good, like, there definitely is an element of, especially this season, that anyone can win the championship. I do think this playoffs is a little strange in general because, like, the Pacers are up 2-0 on the Cavs right now, who don't have Garland, and the Knicks are up 2-0 on Boston after some like wild finishes, and then you go to the West, like Houston's the number 2 seed, and they draw the Warriors in the first round, but then it's like, how much longer are the Warriors going to go? I just think this year there's been so little separation in between like both conferences. And like, to be honest, I'm kind of surprised because I thought Cleveland and Boston were like far away the best teams in the East. But Cleveland, some injuries, and Boston, I mean, some injuries too, but just not playing well. So I think there are still going to be those elite teams that, yeah, would they be guaranteed to win a title or reach the finals? No, but I think like most years in OKC, like they very well still might make a run and are a threat to win the title, but like they have to play up against Nikola Jokic right now and everything like that. So I think like those teams that are built to last, like the Bostons and the OKCs, I think they'll still like dominate, but that's not to say that like crazy things don't happen, because we're seeing it this year overall. So I think like parity is like a thing, but I also don't think, just like, I think this year is a bit of an anomaly, essentially, because of all the nuances that each team is going through.
Yeah, like I think the NBA is definitely in a better place than it was during that whole super team era. It is much more
Yeah.
balanced right now, which is great. And like your top of the league type teams like, Boston and to some extent Cleveland and even OKC, a lot of it is homegrown, which is really cool and fun to see from a fan perspective. But I think I'm with you. Like it's better. It's much more even now than it was when you and I were younger, for example. But it's still not the NFL where it's really a coin flip on those playoff games. Like you said, so the Cavs being so hurt, that's absolutely why the Pacers are up 2-0 on them right now. And even in that, the Cavs had a shot to win that second game, and they kind of blew it there. Unfortunately for them, fortunately for the Pacers. I kind of like the Pacers, so I was cool with it. But regardless, I also think you look at the matchups in this year's playoffs. Like you mentioned, Golden State. That's not a usual 7 seed. That
Mhm.
Warriors team that adds Jimmy Butler there at the deadline. You look at the Pistons Knicks series. Would the Pistons really have given the Pacers a better shot than the Bucks did? Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe it's hard to say, but you do know that the Pistons were a particularly tough matchup for that Knicks team with the way that they were built. So I also think we had just some favorable seeding, honestly. Like
Yeah.
like Clippers Nuggets was awesome, awesome, and
Yeah.
that's just you couldn't have planned a better matchup between those teams. And I think if you put either of those teams in a different series, it looks a little bit different, right? So
Well,
yeah,
even
that's where I'm at.
Minnesota and Lakers, like that's a good
Right.
matchup for Minnesota and bad for the Lakers, and the 6th seed wins that series. So yeah, I just think this year, because there was so little separation in each conference. I mean, remove your OKC in the West and Cleveland and Boston in the East, but like the rest of the teams in on both sides were pretty close together. And then you add this, like what's going on with Cleveland and Boston right now, and OKC has to play Jokic. Like I think it was just a perfect storm of upsets and craziness
Yeah.
in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just hope we can continue to get lucky like this with these matchups in
Right.
future playoffs because this has been a really fun one to watch.
Yeah.
All right, let's look kind of a draft question, kind of not. This is from General Smoky Clay. Says the impact of NIL on pick value is interesting, right? So as more older college players are choosing to stay an extra year so they could get some of that NIL money, they forego going and entering the draft, which obviously hurts the back end of that draft, right? Because it's usually the kind of role players, later first round, early second guys that take the step back and just take the NIL money, or at least that's how it's shaken out or seemed to shake out so far. So he asks, does this increase the value of second round picks 2 to 3 years from now, which the Pistons have a ton of? Because eventually this evens out. Guys can't just keep going back to college forever. So if you have right now a large pocket of players deferring their entry into the NBA draft to pursue NIL money, in the future it stands to reason that they would be better NBA draft prospects and then coming out at the same time. So almost overloading some of these classes in a couple of years with still your one and dones and your sophomore players that took a big leap, and then now these fourth year maybe senior players that could have gone in previous eras but would not have now. So that's the general idea that he was arguing for there in the question. What do you think about that? Is that plausible, or do you think maybe NIL is going to have a different impact as we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think NIL will ever have a huge impact on like your first round prospects, because if you're a prospect and you're getting first round buzz after your freshman year, like you have to go, just because it's like you need to show flashes as a one and done guy, and that's like it's harder than I'm saying it. I know that, but like that's all you need to do. And then each year you stay, you have to like just do a little bit more, like take over a little bit more to keep your stock where it is.
And just
Um,
really quickly to add on to the point you're making, you also have to think about long-term income because if you have a chance to go to the NBA in the first round, that is a 4-year contract, mostly guaranteed. Maybe, or sorry, a 5-year mostly guaranteed contract, not a 4-year. So your NIL is just through the period that you're in college, and if everything works out, then great, awesome, right? You get a little bit more in that way. But if it doesn't, and the NBA side falls through, you passed up on quite a bit of long-term money in pursuit of right now money. So that's a factor as well, just to add on to what you were saying.
yeah, and I mean, I know I'm definitely taking this like in the weeds too immediately, but like I know that years of service is a big deal for these guys in the NBA. Like first what jumps out to us is like they're a year earlier and being eligible for an extension, like when they really have an opportunity to get paid. Same thing with free agency, and teams are much more comfortable taking shots on like younger guys and developing them within their system. And not to like, I love the idea of like 4-year players like being able to contribute immediately to an NBA roster. I mean, I think in the general question, I think that it might be class specific, just depending on how things shake out. Like, yeah, will there be one class in a couple years that might be deeper than what we've seen? Yeah, and if there's a guy that a team likes and the Pistons have a pick there, whether it's a draft day trade or general range leading up to it, that definitely helps you make a move and maybe get something you're interested in or more draft capital in the future. But I think in general with like second round picks, they're always going to be valuable because teams like what we're seeing the Pistons doing, they pool them and maybe turn them into something else down the road. And if you can't turn them into anything else, you just keep the assets in your cupboard for when a deal is going to happen, or you make a pick and see if you can develop a guy in your system. So I don't know. I honestly think it's going to be more or less the same. And I think like second round picks are still going to hold their value unless it's like a fake pick, like top 55 protected or whatever. That's just thrown in because you have to throw in something.
All right, fun one here from Derek Brown in the live audience. Says, do you think Assar and Ron can work together in the future? He says neither is big enough to play the power forward, and the offense struggles, and the half court might make it difficult, or might not work. Sorry.
Man, I feel like this just depends on how Ron develops because like I think you could get away with Assar as the 4 long term, but I think it depends like is Jaylen Duran your set? Like, what are you gonna do at center if Assar and Ron are your starting 3 and 4? Like, I just think it really depends on how Ron develops offensively and with his shot, because we know his shooting's a work in progress. He turns down open looks. He's a good driver, great energy guy, good defender. But just with what we've seen at times with like Assar offensively, and we saw some really good games from him in the first round and throughout the year, like he's not gonna be that guy that teams worry about like on the perimeter or anything like that. And if you have 2 of those on the floor together at the same time as like your main core, I think that's just gonna be easy for teams to exploit and make Cade Cunningham's life a whole lot more difficult than it needs to be.
Yeah, I agree. Like the question kind of baked into this is if Assar Thompson can essentially play at the 4, right? So in a situation with Assar and Ron both starting out at the forward spots, you're not playing a traditional 3-4 system, right? Where you have a regular small forward and a regular power forward. It look a lot more like what the Pistons right now have done with Assar Thompson and Tobias Harris, right? So the thing with Assar and the reason that he's so unique and what makes him both valuable and a tricky puzzle piece to fit at the same time is that offensively he's a four who can handle the basketball, right? It's like it's a bit like if Aaron Gordon couldn't shoot, right? That's your Assar Thompson role offensively. You want him in some DHOs, you want him in some pick and roll, you want him as a cutter, you want him in the dunker spot, you want him flashing to the elbow, right? That's where you want Assar to be offensively. Defensively, though, I agree with everybody that he's much better out on the wing or on guards because he's so good out there. It'd be almost like tying one hand behind your back if you don't ask him to guard, Jalen Brunson, right? That just doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you do that? He's very good at it. So then the trick is, can you find another forward who can offensively play like a wing and defensively hold up against bigger fours like Julius Randle, right? Because truly the weight thing is only a problem for specific bigs. So Julius Randle would be one, Zion Williamson would be one. These are guys that, like, if there isn't a guard that you want Assar checking, you really probably wouldn't want to put him out on those guys. But like Pascal Siakam, yeah, I'd be cool with it. I'd be fine with that. Oddly enough, I think Assar could probably do a decent job on Giannis. So like it's more the question of, can you allow him to roam and match up to the other team's best perimeter player when he's playing the four? So can you find a guy that allows you to do that? I think Ron has a shot. I think it could work. Again, I'm not too worried about size there. I think both Ron and Assar actually could serve to put on a decent amount of muscle over the offseason. That would be a top priority, I think, for both of them if they can. But to me, my answer is jury's out. I think it can. I want to see them try. Long term, I think the idea here is to get Assar essentially at the four in your starting groups and then start to move him around like a chess piece after that. But whether or not he and Ron can make that work is kind of up to them.
Yeah. And I just think, like, with these four, the non-Cade, like, young pieces, you have Ivy, Duran, Ron, Assar, like, I don't think you're going to be able to pay all of them what they want to be paid. So, like, who's it going to be? And maybe, like, you don't have to. Ivy and Duran are extension eligible this season, obviously. And then Assar and Ron are shortly thereafter. So is someone going to go into restricted free agency? Like, what is going to I mean, I think it's just clear there's going to be a time where you have to make decision. We're going to find out what at least a couple of those decisions are, or where the front office's head is at this offseason. It's just like a lot of money, I guess, and it's not going to work out, and they need to figure out how to maintain like the flexibility that they've had in recent years.
Yeah. And the only other thing that I want to add is just, I think the upside here is so ridiculously high. I mean, this is still a wing and forward league. As many great, guards and bigs as there are scattered around the NBA right now, success is still mostly driven from that 3 and 4 spot. So if you can find a way to get those two guys to work together, like if Ron could just be maybe 35-36% from 3 in a year or two, that would be huge. If you could get Assar and Ron, like I mentioned, to bulk up a little bit so they're both position flexible in who they guard, that would be huge. Like I know it's prognosticating a few years out, but if you could get a fully developed Cade, Ivy, Holland, Assar, and then like a stretch big like a Miles Turner, right, who can shoot and block some shots, that is awesome. That would be an incredible starting five. I don't know how you can afford to do that, and it gets tough.
Yeah.
Now Ivy's coming up on an extension, Assar coming up pretty soon, Cade's getting more money now. Like it gets difficult, but that's the mold of something that could take down a Boston or could give Cleveland trouble. Like those types of teams and be flexible enough to do whoever the next team that's like that is, right? So I think it's worth pursuing. I don't know if it's going to work, but the upside's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think you're still I mean, I would probably be, and it's weird saying this about like Ron after his rookie year, but like I think that they're both like trending towards getting an extension. I mean, obviously there's still plenty of time to go. But it's just like what does that mean for everything else, and how can they improve to like make some of these conversations and I guess like fits a little bit easier to make, so the rest is just plug and play around them.
Since we were just talking about extensions, let's look at this one here from Chuck Wagon. It says, what are some benefits and costs of extending Jaden Ivey and Jaylen Duran this offseason, somewhere in that $25 to $30 million in salary range?
Is that, I'm assuming they mean like each for this? Like,
Yes. Yeah, each of
uh,
them being in that 25 to 30 range.
yeah, I mean, I think the benefit is like you lock some of these young pieces down. They don't take you into restricted free agency and see what happens there and potentially have to pay them a lot if you want to keep them. I mean, I think the cost with Ivy is like he had a great season up until he went down, and then you missed all this time. And honestly, like the biggest cost to me, and we've had plenty of discussions about Duran as like a defender, like is he the starting center for the long term? I think the biggest cost to this would be like related to what we were just talking about. Like you have Assar that's coming up to be eligible for an extension a year later, and then Ron Holland after. Like honestly, thankfully, the Pistons don't have a first round pick that they'd want to extend this year, because you're just not going to be able to pay all these guys. And I would be I would be worried about if I gave like Ivy and Duran that money, like what it would mean about if I'm gonna go ahead and pay Asar Thompson and then pay Ron Holland. Like what if Ron Holland develops into a max player? Like is that likely? Probably not. But like what if he does? And then you have all this other money locked down. Like we've seen even back like Troy Weaver did a ton of wrong, but he like prioritized being flexible. We heard him say that a lot. Langdon, it seems like he's wanted to do the same. The only like real money he has committed beyond this season is Cade's extension and Tobias, which is now an expiring. So I think the Pistons are going to get in a team that get to a point where they're a team that has a lot of money on the books. Like I don't know if they'd be flirting with the luxury tax or anything like that. But I think just the main worry in like extending those two at a bigger number. I mean, that's not crazy. It's not anything near a max, but it's like you have these two other wings who you're gonna need to make a decision on shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and it the long-term money of this is so tough because yeah, the cap's going up, but that also means max slots also continue to increase in their size, even that post-rookie max. I don't think that Asar Thompson's necessarily trending to a max contract. So and neither, I mean, as we know from having this conversation now, neither are Jaden Ivey or Jaylen Duran. So really the only alternative or the only one that could be is Ron Holland. And I'm with you, like as much as I'm bullish on Ron Holland's potential, I would never guarantee that he's going to get to a level where he's going to get a max contract. So, like the flexibility part here could be intriguing. Like, so I'm with YouTube user too. Where'd that comment go? Yeah, he says one of the costs of extending Jaylen Duran to that contract would be that you have a vastly overpaid center. Yeah, the 25 to 30 would be quite a bit for Jaylen Duran. For we've talked about it a million times, but this is still a not great defender, lob threat, only big, who's a better offensive rebounder than defensive rebounder. And I know a lot of people want to talk about the passing, rightfully so. He's very good in dribble handoffs, but the Knicks begged him to beat them in the short roll, and he did not. So there's obviously still some work to do in that passing space, which we can talk about more as we get later on into the off season. So I think it might be. I would be open if the average between these two contracts is between 25 and 30 million. Like if you gave Ivy 35 for 4 years or whatever, and then Duran like a 3-year 20. I think I'd be okay with that. It does give you flexibility, adding another contract in that 15 to $20 million range. If I doubt that he would, but if Duran would accept that, then that's great. That allows you to match larger salaries in future trades. I think you'd have to wait until after this first deadline, right? If you sign the rookie extension, yeah. So when we get into next offseason, then we would be able to, or Langdon would be able to make that kind of trade. So having another, $20 million that you could theoretically pair with an expiring 26 from Tobias Harris. And, now we're talking about a 40 or $50 million player if you wanted to make it that type of big swing sort of trade. So I think the flexibility here would be good. Ivy too, like if you could get him on a contract around 30 to 35, that'd be great. That's not an overpay, and we're getting close to that just being the going rate for a good starting guard in this league, which is insane. So I think that's something worth pursuing. But yeah, that'd be high for Duran, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think it's so tough because with like Duran, I kind of look at the extension that Stewart got and say like, okay, let's be around there, probably a little bit above. But in that general idea, which was a very reasonable deal, is that
Yeah, and I do
something?
that.
Yeah, is that something he would sign though?
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, what YouTube user brings up, you can find like another center too if you need to, and you don't want to vastly overpay one. Like I agree with that too. But I would like for all the criticism that we've sent Duran's way, like I think he's also like a big piece of this locker room and is a great like offensive pick and roll partner with Cade too. So I would just like if he was extended this summer just for it to be somewhere reasonable, because we're not talking about either our max players, and who knows if any of these young players besides Cade are. Like I think the one that has the best shot is Holland, but has a heck of a lot of work to do to potentially get there.
All right, so we did get a couple of voicemail questions. So let's take a look at, since we're talking off-season stuff, let's do this one from Glendale, I think was the name.
What's going on, guys? Listen to you guys every day, every podcast from Glendale. My question is, in football, they say the biggest jump for players is between year one and year two. What about basketball? Is it year one and year two that you expect big jumps, or is it later on in their careers? And I ask that because of Assar Thompson not having an offseason last year. We'll have one this year, and Ron Holland going for his first offseason. What do you expect from those guys in the improvement that they should make, that they could make? Thanks.
All right, before you give your response, also could have been Wandale. I didn't catch the name, so let us know either in a comment or in another phone call, voice message. Appreciate the question. What do you think? When is the bigger jump? He's right. When we're talking about football, it's usually a year two big jump, right? So what is that for basketball?
Yeah, I think, and I'm interested in like what you think, because I feel like it's year 3 to year 4, and like some guys it even happens later. And I mean that answer might be a little bit of recency bias with what we've seen with Cade Cunningham, but I think we've seen that with with some other guys as well. So, and what he brought up about Assar Thompson too is a great point. Like a lot of these guys, Cade even missing year 2, those blips along the road happen. I think the main difference, if you're comparing it to football, is like the basketball, most of the highly touted prospects are like 19 years old coming into the league. Maybe they're 20 by the time they play their first game. Like Cade Cunningham's 23 right now. And I think they just need a little bit more time because of how raw they really are. When in football, you're getting like juniors and seniors, depending on the player, of course, but just different rules, obviously. So yeah, I feel like the most likely option is like year 3 to year 4. And if not that, like maybe they just need a little bit more time too, like year 4 to year 5 to be like 24, 25 years old.
Yeah, I agree. I would say from my own observation, it's much more often it's a year 3 jump. Now, guys are constantly improving. I mean, the game of basketball is, not to say football is not complex, but you're much more siloed in the type of thing, whatever that thing is, quote unquote, that you're doing out on a football field, because there are so many different players. Your role is much more specific than it would be in the NBA or in basketball, where you've only got 5 guys out there and everybody's doing quite a bit of stuff. So I think it just naturally is going to take a little bit longer for guys, like you mentioned too. They're younger when they get into the league, but it seems like it's a year 3 put you on whatever train track you're going to be on for the rest of your career, right? For the most part, the guys that look like they're going to develop into a star, they look like future stars by year 3. If they look like they're about to be a role player or a very good starter, that's where it seems to silo out. So you brought up earlier too that guys, or not guys, but teams really like drafting younger players to take a swing on. It's not because they're young and therefore they have more time to develop. It's more often the case that because they're so young, you get them for more of their not old age years on your rookie contract, plus the rookie extension that you could get them on later in right afterwards if they are a hit. Right? If you draft a 19-year-old, he becomes a star. Then by the time he ends that post-rookie deal, he's what, 28? So if you lose out on him at that point, okay, he's maybe only got 3 or 4 years left in the prime. But best case scenario, you've had a guy for, call it 12 years, right? And then you lose them right when they start to turn 33 or 34. So there's really the advantage of the younger age bracket in the NBA, because the contracts are so long and you have the team options baked into the rookie deals. So all this is to say, yeah, YouTube user is on it as well. Year 3 or year 4, I think it's usually year 3. Like whatever track you are on by year 3, that's pretty much what the player is going to end up being. I mean, just try for fun. You guys don't have to, obviously, Blake, you don't have to respond. And if you're playing along at home, don't have to respond. Just think for yourself. Try to name players that took a huge leap in their second contract.
Yeah,
not a lot.
It normally just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, it usually just doesn't. Even a guy like Giannis, by the time he got to the end of his rookie deal, was looking pretty dang good. He wasn't obviously what he became, but it was apparent by the time he put pen to paper on his contract extension that they found something pretty cool there in Milwaukee at the time. So, yeah. Do you have anything more you want to add?
No, I mean, the only other thing, and you kind of brought it up too, but I think just like these guys are different. But so it could be, and yeah, QT mentions it in the chat. Like, this is my main point. Like, age is a factor too. And like a guy like Marcus Assar, that's a great point, who's older. Like, he's going to be more ready-made than a guy like Ron Holland, which QT brings up. So every player has like a little bit different of a contest text. There's definitely different groups you can pigeonhole them into, but overall I think there is a degree of it too on like different players, different roles, things just like pop a little bit later for some guys too.
All right, since we're kind of turning more of our focus to the offseason, we got a question from Tiger Fever, which I hope means that this is a Detroit Tigers fan and not like an LSU football fan or something. But regardless, says, what does a perfect Piston offseason look like to you? So let's take this broadly, right? You don't have to name specific players that you want them to target or anything like that. Just in general, what does a successful or a perfect offseason look like?
I mean, I think a lot of it is going to be focusing on the guys that they had in their locker room. Like we were talking about NIL, and with all the transfer portal stuff, like you see a lot of these schools, their biggest recruits are the ones that they already have, just keeping them in the building. And obviously a different game we're talking about here. And like Malik Beasley is the most important free agent for the Pistons for me, or I guess the decisions that you're making on Ivy and Duran are probably more important, but for the team, like on the floor, like I just think you need to find a way to bring Malik Beasley back, and for everything he brings to the locker room as well. So I think a lot of it is just locking down Beasley for whatever his contract ends up being, however long it is. If Langdon decides he wants to extend Ivy and or Duran, just not like if you can work out a deal by all means, but hopefully it's not one that just shoots the Pistons flexibility in the foot and turns into a bad contract by the end of it. And also, like, I feel like I guess I haven't thought much about like what are they going to bring back, THJ or Schroeder. But I think especially THJ, if he's going to come back, I think just getting him on basically a veteran minimum or a little bit above. Like I think the perfect offseason for me is just sort of like running it back and seeing what you have more. You overachieve, like see if it's for real and can last like more than just a season. But with doing that, like don't overpay and I guess just cripple your future.
I think I am all for patience. I do not want the Pistons to take a big swing for a home run or you know like add a big time scorer or anything like that. I think the ideal scenario for this offseason is you are still giving Jaden Ivey that chance to be your number 2 option. Whether or not he becomes that, I don't know. I'll say it wasn't trending in the right direction by the time he got injured. I think he was playing better. He was learning how to play off of Cade better, so that fit was working more effectively by the time he got to the end of his season. But his points total was also going down at the same time. He started off scoring quite a bit more, and by the end, I think in January, he was at like 17 points per game. So it wasn't trending in the right way for him being a number 2 option, but I still think that you want to give him a chance to do it. The trouble, though, with completely running it back next year is that you do have to make a contract decision on Jaden Ivey and Jaylen Duran. And part of that decision has to be where you think this roster is going to end up next season and the year after and the year after. So I don't think you can afford to not make a choice on those 2 guys. I don't know what the right choice is. I know I have my preference. I don't know what Langdon's preference is going to be. But just looking at this practically, it doesn't seem likely unless you could get Duran at a very cheap price, or unless you could get Ivy on some sort of huge discount because he was hurt, that you're going to extend both of these guys, which means that you either need to move them this offseason or at the deadline, and that's it. So I think I want them to swing for a double if they can. I want them to swing for a double. I think you look at the starting 5 that you trotted out last year, and I can tell you that there are 4 spots guaranteed to be the same as they were. but they had 5 starters, right? So of the 5 guys of Cade, Ivy, Assar, Harris, and Duran, I want them to pick 4 of them and upgrade on the 5th. Whoever the 5th one is, be that Duran, be that Ivy. I'd be worried about upgrading over Harris, but if Trajan Langdon thinks that he can, by all means, go that route as well. But most likely, I still think the pivot points here are, what are you going to do with Ivy and Duran? What's their contract situation? And if either of them seems like we're not going to sign to a big extension and really make part of this core for the next 4 years, then you need to act accordingly.
Yeah. It's tough because I think like you said, the decision with Ivy and Duran is so critical, and like I just don't want to be the one to make that decision. So I'm happy that I'm not, because it's a big deal for like what is this team is going to look like, and I guess what they can do for the length of those extensions. And if something like really goes wrong or doesn't work out, then it's just like money on your books. And I don't think either of it will like turn into that, but it could happen. So overall, I mean, I think Trajan has done a fantastic job so far. So like whatever his decision ends up being, I'll like buy in probably and like see it out, unless it's like a ridiculously high deal or something like that. But yeah, it's a really tough time to, I guess, be in Trajan's shoes right now. And it seems like he has great people around him too, who will like help him make sure that the team isn't in a bad position, like longevity wise.
Yeah. And like, I mean, all of this goes away if you can get both of those guys on, like you said earlier, a reasonable contract. If you could do, 4 years, 35 mil for Ivy, fantastic. That's Jalen Green money. Perfect. Great. Will he take that? Will he want to bet on himself? I don't know. I'm personally a little skeptical. If I were in his shoes, I feel like your agent would be telling you to come back healthy and show out and then go to restricted free agency. Same deal for Duran. Like if you want to get the whatever inflation pushed up the Isaiah Stewart contract to be over these 2 years, if you want to give him that deal, then like great. That'd be awesome. I think that would be perfect value and that would be worth doing long term. But if I were in Duran's shoes, I would expect your agent to be telling you, no, try to and continue improve the shot blocking numbers, go into restricted free agency and see if you could push that number up higher. So I just don't think that either of them are really likely to be taking the money that the Pistons would be smart to offer them. And then at that point, that means you got to make a call. The only thing I'd add to like my perfect Pistons offseason outside of making that decision, because I think their hand is just forced at this point, I want 2 of the 3 veterans back. I don't care which 2 it is. So Beasley, Hardaway Jr., and Schroeder, give me 2 of those guys. That's it. So if it's Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., great. If it's Schroeder,
what if it's not Beasley? Really?
That would stink, but if it's not Beasley, it means he got paid more than the Pistons were able to give him. And at that point, it's just a bummer, right? But there's nothing they could have done.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's my ideal offseason. We still have so many questions left. We're going to leave some of these longer term like trade questions for a future episode because we're running low on time. So apologies to Dave, 10.9 miles north of LCA, Dylan, 22, and Lil Ben. We'll get to you guys next week. And then we're going to do one more here and then end on a voicemail question. All right, so here's the next. This is Team Raph. It says, if we assume that Cade is the one All-NBA player that we have on this roster here in Detroit, how do the Pistons get the other All-NBA, All-Defensive Team, or All-Star, like either of those 3 players onto the roster? Who would take them to the second round the quickest, basically?
I mean, honestly, like I think it's, if it's anyone on the roster right now, it's like you have to hope that Ron Holland develops into a borderline all-star player and hope his offensive game takes a leap. But I think the most likely answer to this question in terms of like how you get this player on the roster is through a trade. And Wes said it, like I agree. I don't want the Pistons to take a major swing like that over the offseason. I think they need to really just think about what type of player they're looking for, who would complement Cade Cunningham the best, and take this team to another level. Like, just be a bucket getter when this team gets it, like sort of what Tobias Harris has been, but just a younger player who has more like offensive juice, I guess, and can like take over at times when Cade needs it, and just like with how good of a playmaker Cade is. So, I mean, what I mentioned about Ron Holland, like we're talking about a rookie, so there's a lot to come there. But I think if it's not Ron, and this front office might not be willing to wait to see if it's Ron, like, and I mean, there might be a move before he would get to that point, is what I mean. I think the front office believes in Ron a lot, but I think there will be like some trade, even if it's not for a crazy big star, just like someone to maybe bridge the gap while Holland develops.
Yeah, I mean, just to like go back to that last question, I don't think that all NBA type guy or the big trade for a big all-star type player is likely to happen this offseason. But I like the ideal case is you give Jaden Ivey the chance to be that guy, right? You give Ron Holland a chance to usurp Tobias Harris in the starting lineup. Ron Holland is not that far away. Like, I understand he's really far away from being a star, an all-star type player. But if you're just looking at that young guy and saying, okay, what does he need to be a good starter at the forward spot? Well, he needs to improve that three-point shot a little bit and be a little bit more consistent with his ball handling. That's about it. That is tantalizingly close. So what if you get to next season and it just becomes apparent early on that, hey, Tobias probably needs to go to the bench, right? We probably do. We just need to see Ron Holland and Assar Thompson and see if we could figure this out now, right? Moving forward for the rest of this season. I think you want to give these guys a chance still to step into the big shoes that this would be. Can someone be all NBA? Can Assar Thompson make an all defensive team and compete for defensive player of the year? That would be great, right? Can Jaden Ivey be an all-star in a really guard-heavy Eastern Conference? Maybe, but give the guys a shot, I think. Let's squeeze this in before we get to the voicemail, and then we'll close out. This is from YouTube user. It says, what do you think the Pistons should do, in your opinion, could do, being the best major overall move, and then will do what we actually think Langdon would do this offseason? He says for the could do, make it a little bit painful in terms of what the Pistons give up.
Oh boy. So in terms of should, I think it relates a little bit to just bringing back, like Wes said, a couple of the vets, maybe getting, I almost want to see them run it back and see how they start the next season, to see if they're in playoff position at the trade deadline, next year's trade deadline, and maybe then there's a move that you can make there. For in terms of what they could do, Wes, were you the one who brought up Desmond Bane as like?
Yep, I did, but I don't know if they can get there money wise. He's got a really large contract.
Yeah, he has a big but something that, like, I'm just trying to go through these teams who might pivot, like the Miamis, the Memphis.
Jaren Jackson Jr. would be like my target number one this offseason because he is on a relatively cheap deal. And although, I mean, to go back to last question from Team Raph, he's technically a one-time All-Star. So maybe that answers that, right? Maybe that's what they could do. I just, with Memphis, they have Zach Edey already. So why would they want Jaylen Duran? They'd probably rather have a guy like Ivy or Holland or Assar. And if I'm the Pistons, or at least me personally, I don't love Jaren Jackson Jr. as a 4 full-time. I like when he can moonlight at the 4. I think him starting at the 5 and then doing a little bit of backup minutes with Isaiah Stewart, like next to Isaiah Stewart, that could be a lot of fun, that flexibility he could have. But I don't want him to be a full-time 4. He's much more Miles Turner than Chet Holmgren to me. So I just don't know if the fit's really there.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm just trying to look at because the free agent class. I mean, they're like Miles Turner is interesting, but I don't think he's gonna just sign with the Pistons. And yeah, he's gonna cost a lot of money. So I think it's just like I know like we have a question about Zion that we'll talk about next week, but like I just don't think the moves like that, like the glaring names that could be available, like I think it's teams that could make a pivot and like who on those teams could potentially be available. And I think like Memphis is a great example. And then who knows what's going to happen in Miami too.
Yeah, like to go directly to the question, I think what they should do, my opinion, is make that call on Ivy or Duran and probably move on from whichever one you don't want to majorly invest in, because I suspect that it's going to take a major investment to keep both of them around on a contract extension. So pick and then act accordingly. I don't know if they're going to do that though. In terms of could do, I mean, I'll just stick with Jaren Jackson Jr. Like that's the younger Miles Turner to me, right? Both of those guys aren't the best rebounders, but they're both great shot blockers. They can shoot. They can do a little bit of scoring if they up their volume. That would be like if you want to play Assar Thompson and Ron Holland together at the 3-4 or the 4-3, whichever you want to sort those two guys out at. That's the type of big you need to make that work. I know that you don't really have the physicality there. And if you are playing someone like a Jokic, it might be a little bit difficult, or an Embiid, but we've said this a million times too. It's not like anyone else can stop those guys either. So at least you make it hard for them on the other end. In terms of what they will do, I honestly don't know. Is that fair to say? I have no idea.
No one does. So I think it's like totally fair. And yeah, I think once we see like what happens, the decisions that are or aren't made with Ivy and Duran, like I think that's just the main domino to fall.
Yeah.
Then maybe then we can see where the rest of everything is going.
And like, if even reading into some of Langdon's quotes, which I thought his postseason presser was really great. I thought that it was a good bit of mixed in refreshing honesty in there. Like he's talked about before, being surprised, right, at how good the team was, essentially, in not those exact words, but alluding to it. So like I thought the presser was great, but all of his comments on like Ivy and Duran and Assar getting another off season, you could read those either way. You could read those as we're really invested in these guys, that's our future. You could also read into that as, I'm trying to position that we don't want to move on from any of these guys. If you want them, you got to come get them. I just don't know which way it was leaning on that. It's for not having a first round draft pick. I think this is going to be a really interesting and fun off season. I really do.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and yeah, YouTube user said he feels like they're gonna run it back almost completely.
They could.
Like that's kind of what I think too. Maybe some minor changes here and there, like minor trade, but I don't think we're gonna get anything like groundbreaking. But maybe we do at like the trade deadline. We'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the one thing I am confident in is that there's not going to be a big home run type swing this offseason. I think, like I said earlier, I think there could be a double. I would like to see a double, like just improve one of the starting spots, but don't necessarily get a superstar who's going to go out and get you 30 a night or anything like that. But the big move, I'm pretty confident it's not going to happen. All right, let's close out on this one. This is from our guy, a fella.
Hey, what's going on, Wes and Blake, the Pistons Pindown extraordinaire? This is a fella from the BBB comments, and I have a question for you. First and foremost, always appreciate the content, and thank you for answering my questions when you can. And secondly, with the season ended for now, what has been your favorite moment from this playoff series specifically? And if you want to put in the whole season, feel free, but definitely from this playoff series, what's been your favorite moment? All right, talk to you.
All right, Blake, can I be selfish real quick? I want to make sure you don't steal mine.
Yeah, go first. Please go first.
Awesome. All right, Game 5, the Knicks making the comeback. It's getting dicey again. You know, the Pistons are trying to close out a tough win, another tough win. Cade Cunningham takes the little step back there on the elbow. He's incredible defense from the Knicks, and he does the most Cade Cunningham thing ever and hits an open and cutting Assar Thompson for essentially the game-sealing bucket. That was the most our superstar plays winning basketball moment for me, and it just made me very, very not only happy because they go on and win the game, and that was again essentially the game-sealing bucket, but just the unselfishness of Cade, who some people say maybe should have taken that shot because he's the guy, right? If that's your mentality, he's the guy. He should have been the one to put it up to try and seal it. And no, instead he made the right play, the winning play. And it's incredible that the Pistons get to build around this guy for the foreseeable future. And that I, as a fan, I know that that's what I can count on every single night. Our superstar plays winning basketball. And that was the best moment of the playoffs to me.
Yeah, that is a good one. I wouldn't have stole it, but it is a good one. I was just gonna say simply the game 2 win. Like, even though we both expected the Pistons to win a game in this series, just like seeing them actually do it was awesome, and do it on the road by that matter, and holding the Knicks to, I think it was like 94 points in that game or whatever it was. Like, it was just a great game, and it just built all that momentum and hype, like bringing the series back home. Didn't work out great. We all know how it ended, but I guess just that like feeling of excitement, like with that win, and then the days following and leading up to the game, like playoffs, being back at Little Caesars Arena, Cade's playoff debut at home, like it was just awesome. And if I had to like break it out to the full season too, I think my favorite was Cade's buzzer beater off the glass in Miami on national TV. Like that was unreal.
Yeah, if we're thinking whole season, how about Jaden Ivey's game-winning 4-point play?
Oh yeah, that's a good one too. Mine's a little more recency bias, but that was a great one.
Because that was just nuts.
Yeah, and then Mike Brown gets fired the next day.
Yeah, because we had Detroit sports was on a run of firing opposing head coaches, right? Because I think that was shortly after
Bears.
Yeah, the Thanksgiving game against the Bears. So you had a couple weeks after whoever that coach was got fired, and then the Pistons do it to the Kings as well. I don't know. There's just something about Ivy like having the confidence to hold the gooseneck on the ground from like a corner heave that was not a normal looking jump shot. I'm pretty sure when he shot it, like he didn't even gooseneck the finish. He just afterwards did it. It was just one of the wildest game-winning shots I've seen. So yeah, that one's up there for me.
Yeah, we saw some incredible games this year too. Like Paul Caruso brings up the other game at the Heat against the Heat from earlier in the year when Spoelstra called a timeout he didn't have. That was insane too. There were a ton of great like I know that how the series ended was disappointing, but this was a season I'll remember for forever, pretty much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I wish I could just be a total prisoner of the moment right after game 2, like you said, because the vibes after that game were just immaculate. I cannot remember a more positive time for Pistons fans, just walking around town, out on Twitter, in the comments at Detroit Bad Boys, like in our comments on the show, like everybody was just over the moon, and it was so fun. So fun to see that energy come back to Pistons basketball. So, you may have picked the better moment, Blake. I think you may have.
Oh no. Well, I mean, no. Yours was good too, because I think the vibes would have been like totally different if it was like a 5-game series, like you mentioned.
Yeah, fair. No, that's true. That's true. To guarantee the end the streak, the playoff losing streak too. I know they still have the home one, but honestly,
Yeah.
that one doesn't bother me as much. The playoff losing streak needed to end.
Yeah. People know they should belong. They didn't go in there and get swept or get ousted in 5 games. So.
And they ended that playoff losing streak the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
Did it on the road at MSG.
Yeah.
After almost losing a big lead in the fourth again. So, hey, how about that?
That was the story of every series. But
it still is too.
Yeah.
By the way, look at the Celtics and the Cavs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, incredible season though, with a ton of like great moments that like we should go through some even more when we have more time to prepare sometime over the off season.
Yeah. We'll do, the 2 things you guys can expect as we're closing out the show here, as we're getting into the off season, we will do 2 episodes. One on just general takeaways from that playoff series, because we feel like we both learned quite a bit about this team and where they stand and about the players on the roster just from that. So we definitely want to get that in sometime soon. And then as well, just a kind of a season retrospective, which should be a fun one. Just looking back, like you said, at all the crazy things that happened over the year, some of the takeaways from the season on the whole, and we'll get to have quite a bit of fun with all of that. So you guys can look forward to that likely in a week where it's a little bit lower on the pre-submitted questions, which was not this week. Again, shout out to our 3 guys, Lil Ben, Dylan 22, and Dave 10.9 miles north of LCA. We didn't get to your questions today. We will. Either on the next show or one shortly after that. But other than that, Blake, I'll hand the torch over to you.
Yeah, and shout out to a fella, and we're not sure if it's Wandale or Glendale, so let us know again. But shout out to you for using the voice line. Anyone
and calling in the car.
Yeah.
I think that's our first car call. So we've had an international call. Yeah. We've had a car call. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. But yeah, reminder, anyone can call that number, ask a question, hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to our guy, Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.